with the symbol of American capitalism and American might just in ruins brings a tear to an eye. I mean, think of the humanity that's lost in this type of thing, but think in terms of what it's going to do to us as a country. I mean, what type of procedures will we have to put into place? What protocols will we have to put into place at our airports, at our borders to protect against this? There'll be a human outcry about security that has never existed before in this country. This is just monumental. This is something that happens and you're in history and you don't realize that the world is going to change after an event such as this. I can't see America going back to where it was in terms of not looking at security, not looking at intelligence gathering, not looking at our ability to protect ourselves. This now is on the front page. It removes everything off. Every other story is gone. This is something that is going to be with us in the decades to come.
Dr. Kushner, if I might interrupt you, thank you very much. Please, will you stand by, because I want to ask you some more questions, but we need, for those, please stay on the line. The people that are just tuning in, we need to just reiterate and give them a bit more information here, because there have been a couple of recent developments that we need to tell people about.
One of the most startling is the fact that we now only see one tower of the World Trade Center Twin Towers standing. We've gotten word that one World Trade Center has either partially or fully collapsed.
It looks like a partial collapse.
Yeah.
We can still see below the smoke. This is actually tape. Okay, this is actually tape.
However, and this is, you are now witnessing
That's the collapse right there.
There it is.
Obviously, that structure weakened by the aircraft that we saw fly into it, over an hour ago now. That was the second tower.
That was the second one, but it was hit much lower. It was a good 30 stories down, something like that. It was about double the ways down from the first of the world towers.
Which the lower it is, obviously, the more vulnerable it is to have a collapse like that.
Now, I don't know if you've seen this, Jim. This is, all right, we are looking once again earlier.
This is about the point where I, too, tuned in to News Channel 4.
If you look up in your right-hand side, you will see an aircraft coming into the picture. It'll be there any moment.
Right there.
There it is. Now watch this.
I'll actually dip behind the first building. And there it is.
So it goes around behind that building and comes in from the left side, it appears.
It crossed over the Hudson.
Right.
And we have had eyewitnesses who have watched that aircraft. They told us it appeared to be a good size. They compared it to the size of a shuttle, you know, like the Boston or Washington shuttle. And indeed, an aircraft was hijacked in Boston earlier this morning, and the FBI knew that because of some radio transmissions that came to them. So if you think about this theoretically, that may have been the aircraft that then went into that
and this isn't only New York that's under siege right
this was just the first. You know, not long after that, another commercial airliner crashed into the Pentagon, or right next to the Pentagon. That building's been evacuated, of course, in the nation's capital. The U.S. Capitol, the State Department, and the White House have all been evacuated. The Secret Service says that they received a very real threat on the White House today, and now we understand that the federal buildings in Newark have been evacuated, and I would imagine that is taking place pretty much around the country.
All planes have also been grounded nationwide by the FAA.
A lot of planes are still being diverted into Westchester Airport right now and into Syracuse to keep the planes out of the New York area, obviously.
But once those people who were headed for New York land in one of those airports, they are not going to get into this city anytime for the next few hours. That is certain, because virtually all traffic coming into the city has been shut off. The bridges, the tunnels are all closed to incoming traffic and to a lot of outbound traffic. I don't know if anybody is getting out of the city at this point.
I did get a report that New Jersey Transit trains are still running under the river, so...
Okay. And again, if you can get out of town, that probably would be the wisest advice at this point. Most of Lower Manhattan has been evacuated at this point. And again, the subways are shut down.
Look at that, the Lincoln Tunnel at 10:15 in the morning over in Weehawken. Never looks like that this time of day.
It's completely empty. So again, let us bring you up to date on the fact that we know nothing about the number of casualties, the number of people who've been injured. We've seen photographs of some of the injuries, recent photographs. What we could see appear to be a lot of burns, a lot of lacerations, that sort of thing. We're waiting for the mayor to hold a press conference so he can bring us up to date on the extent of the human damage, so to speak, in all of this.
During this, the period that followed the initial impact on World Trade Center, the FBI did get word, as I understand it, in some sort of coded message perhaps, that there had been a hijacking, at least those are the reports, from the plane involved, one of the two planes involved, we presume, that then made its way directly into the World Trade Center tower.
And of course we heard President Bush a short time ago call this a terrorist attack. That was before the attack on the Pentagon.
Yes.
Called this a terrorist attack and promised a full-scale investigation to find out who is responsible and to bring them to justice.
Jane, right now we have our Government Affairs reporter Melissa Russo on the telephone. Melissa, are you there?
I'm standing outside St. Vincent's Hospital right now, where the scene is absolutely unbelievable. When I arrived here, it was just as the second building explosion happened, and there is what I could describe as chaos in the streets here. There are hundreds of people just in shock, police officers telling people to go home, obviously worried about crowd control. But at the hospital, there has not been much activity in terms of ambulances arriving here, though you might expect there would be. After that last explosion, some ambulances took off and headed down 7th Avenue, which is otherwise closed to traffic. But St. Vincent's is obviously preparing for the possibility of many, many people arriving at their emergency room. They have what looks like a trauma center set up on the street, on the sidewalk of 7th Avenue. Dozens of stretchers, hospital personnel, nurses, with hospital equipment, IVs, out on the street, awaiting the inevitable, people in need of medical care. It's very disturbing.
So, Melissa, what you're telling us is that you have not seen the number of people that you might expect to be there after an explosion of this magnitude.
That's right. I've only been here for about, I would say, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, but we've seen a couple of ambulances come in. As I said, after that last explosion, I saw some more ambulances race out of here and head down 7th Avenue. But they're obviously preparing for people to be brought here on full alert. They have, as I said, dozens of nurses, nurses' aides out on the street outside the ER on 7th Avenue and 12th Street, stretchers lined up on the street. They're just waiting for people to be coming in, obviously, in need of treatment.
And we're looking right now, Melissa, at some tape that we saw earlier of a woman being taken for medical treatment. It did appear that she had some burns. This is some very... And
we are told that there have been some patients brought here. They probably arrived before I got here. We don't have numbers. We're waiting for a briefing from the hospital. The public relations person from St. Vincent's Hospital did come downstairs and alert the members of the press who are here that as soon as they have an update, they'll bring it to us. But obviously they're overwhelmed with preparing for, an all-hands situation here at the hospital.
Melissa, isn't it true that the Emergency Management Office of the City of New York is located in the World Trade Center?
It's located at 7 World Trade Center, not in one of those two buildings. But of course it crossed my mind as it crossed yours that this is the place that was set up, the nickname for it was the bunker. It was supposed to be a place that would be shielded from any kind of emergency situation where the mayor and top emergency workers would be able to get together in case of this type of emergency. I have not spoken to the mayor's office yet this morning. I don't know where they are working, but it is in 7 World Trade Center, which is on the north side of VC Street, on the other side. However, it's very close. I mean, right across the street from those towers. I would be almost surprised if they felt safe to be there, although I don't know what it looks like on the ground at that part of the city right now.
And Melissa, we would assume that what you are seeing in the way of preparedness at St. Vincent's is being repeated at hospitals throughout Manhattan
I
this
would
morning.
imagine it is. I mean, you can only think the worst in this kind of situation. Obviously, hope for the best, but there's certainly, I'm sort of surprised that we're not seeing more ambulances arriving here. We are one of the closer hospitals. I mean, there's New York Downtown Hospital, which is right across the street from City Hall, essentially, in Lower Manhattan. And then we have St. Vincent's, which is here on West 12th Street.
About security that has never existed before in this country. This is just monumental. This is something that happens and you're in history and you don't realize that the world is going to change after an event such as this. I can't see America going back to where it was in terms of not looking at security, not looking at the intelligence gathering, not looking at our ability to protect ourselves. This now is on the front page. It removes everything off. Every other story is gone. This is something that is going to be with us in the decades to come.
Dr. Kushner?
I mean, what type of procedures will we have to put into place? What protocols will we have to put into place at our airports, at our borders to protect against this? There'll be a human outcry with the symbol of American capitalism and American might just in ruins brings a tear to an eye. I mean, think of the humanity that's lost in this type of thing, but think in terms of what it's going to do to us as a country.